Yo, what it do, YouTube? It's Matt Omega, getting back with another video. This time here to talk about Sony. Specifically, how is it that they just switched to making interactive movies and everybody is just completely on board with it? For years now, the idea of a Sony exclusive has switched from fun gameplay heavy run through interesting worlds, think Little Big Planet, God of War 3, or the Ratchet & Clanks like Cooper, into well-made or very samey interactive movies where gameplay is broken up into chunks between movie sequences. But let's talk about it. I think the most important thing to do is to establish a baseline for what a Sony exclusive even is. And for that, we have to look at how the console was perceived and what games essentially made it what it was. In the case of the Wii, for example, its identity was basically Wii Sports, for better or worse. In the case of the 360, its identity was its multitude of competitive shooters, Halo, Gears, and although COD was on PS3, at the time Activision had a partnership with Microsoft that basically made Xbox the place to play COD. So what was PS3's identity? Ask the wrong person and they just say getting their shit rocked by hackers every year. Ask another wrong person and they'd say chasing behind the 360. Or what was the PS3's real identity? Looking at sales, it was its variety. The lion's share of top sold games on the 360 was some form of Call of Duty, Halo, Grand Theft Auto. But on the PS3, you'd see Gran Turismo, Uncharted, Metal Gear Solid, Batman, God of War, Final Fantasy, Little Big Planet. The identity of the PS3 was in its variety, in that if you went over to your friend's crib, even if you both had PS3s, it was unlikely you'd have the same library. The games themselves were varied and appealed to different people too. A Sony exclusive was fun, generally unique in the space, and most importantly, not formulaic, especially in the cases of games like Little Big Planet. All of that identity seemingly went out the window at the start of the PS4 generation, with The Last of Us PS3 swan song leading the charge toward the beginning of the end. The Last of Us was an amazing game with a narrative so tight they could damn near one for one turn it into a TV show, and it worked the same. The problem started when other Sony studios, probably at Sony's behest, started chasing after its success, causing the Last of Usification of Sony. A lot of major game publishers are guilty of falling into formulas when it comes to game design, the Ubisoft open world anybody, but the Sony Last of Us style narrative seemed to be the gift that kept on giving, with several Game of the Year nominations and even a few wins, and each subsequent exclusive became even more movie-like. Ratchet & Clank PS5 is damn near a Pixar movie. Ghost of Tsushima has a mode meant to replicate a Japanese filmmaker's specific style. God of War, what used to be a Devil May Cry-esque oh my god, I fucked up. Yo, this fix that. God of War, what used to be a Devil May Cry-esque hack and slash, had its gameplay simplified and had the camera thrown over the shoulder, while cinematics got turned up to 11. All of these changes made for much tighter narratives, but came at the cost of the whole part of a game, the actual freaking gameplay. It's not as if your games being formulaic means you automatically fail at some point too. FromSoft has made a great living repackaging fantasy apocalyptic worlds and challenging gameplay to gamers. Sega sells the same game basically every year at this point with the Like a Dragon series, not to mention the slew of sports games that are entirely fine year in and year out. But I do think that Sony is eventually going to hit diminishing returns on their current approach. Honestly, I think it's already happening with Spider-Man 2. When discourse started over the Game of the Year decision after the Game Awards, the clip going viral for why Spider-Man deserved the win was a literal cutscene of Spider-Man getting flung several city blocks by the Sandman, not gameplay.
I'm working on it!
And that isn't a one-off situation. In the past, I've seen clips of God of War 2018 relating specifically to the fight between Kratos and the Stranger in a similar context. Some of the people playing these games seem to care more about the spectacle than the actual moment-to-moment gameplay. There's always going to be a disconnect between gamers that play a game for the actual gameplay and gamers who are there to watch a movie, and Sony is walking a very fine line, while actively looking for the sweet spot between Detroit Become Human and The Last of Us, with gameplay being an afterthought. I'm not saying this to say that Sony was wrong to make the game it's been making, and I do think they still have good gameplay experiences left in them. Just look at Returnal, the only Sony exclusive from the current generation bucking the trend, or Astro's Playroom, if you count a glorified tech showcase as a game. I also still think there's a place for the God of Us Last War style game. They just shouldn't take precedence over actual games when they're really just great narratives in game format. Either do both, do the narrative sparingly, or do gameplay focus. Don't let your company's identity become the gaming company that doesn't give a shit about engaging gameplay. Or they can just say, fuck it, keep going. Who am I to tell them how to live their life? This has been Matt Omega. Peace.